Every surgery begins the same way. A mask placed over the face, a slow descent into sleep. The patient feels nothing. The surgeon cuts. This has been true for nearly 2 centuries. I am a surgeon. I have watched patients go under anesthesia hundreds of times. It is routine now. But someone had to do it first. Someone had to hold the knife. March 30th, 1842, Jefferson, Georgia. A young doctor removed a cyst from a patient's neck. The patient inhaled ether from a towel. He felt nothing. The doctor charged $2. 4 years later, in Boston, a dentist performed the same procedure before a hall full of physicians. A reporter was present. The dentist became famous. The Georgia doctor was forgotten. This is not about who deserved the credit. It is about what the credit did to those who claimed it. 4 men fought over this discovery. 3 of them were destroyed. Before anesthesia, surgery was controlled violence. The patient was restrained by force. The surgeon worked as fast as possible. Speed was the only mercy that existed. There was simply no other way. Robert Liston, the fastest surgeon in London, could amputate a leg in 28 seconds. The faster the knife, the less time spent in agony. Speed was the only surgical kindness. Surgeons tried alcohol, opium, and hypnosis. None of it worked. Patients still screamed through cutting. Patients died from shock. The profession had accepted pain as a permanent fact of surgery. Crawford Long arrived in Jefferson, Georgia in 1839. He was 23. He had trained in Philadelphia and New York. He had watched patients suffer on the table. He found it unacceptable. Jefferson was a small Georgia town. Long opened his practice in a wooden office on College Street. He was the only physician for miles. He observed everything. He waited patiently. In the 1830s, a social entertainment called an ether frolic had spread through American towns. People inhaled sulfuric ether and felt no pain from injuries. It was considered harmless fun. Long attended these gatherings carefully. He noticed something the others had missed entirely. When participants fell under ether, they felt no pain at all. They found their injuries only afterward. If ether removed pain from injuries, it could remove pain from surgery. Long ordered sulfuric ether from Philadelphia. He began experimenting on himself first. He waited for the right case. He experimented first on himself, then on willing patients. He wanted certainty before any public claim. The medical world was skeptical of extraordinary claims. He gathered more cases. He waited. The right case came in early 1842. James Venable had a cyst on his neck. He had avoided surgery for months because he feared the pain. Long recognized his opportunity. Long explained his proposal to Venable. He had sustained bruises under ether without feeling them. He believed surgery could be painless. Venable consented. The date was set for March 30th. College Street, evening. 3 witnesses: Andrew Thurmond, Edmund Rawls, William Thurmond. Venable sat in the chair. Long soaked a towel in ether and held it to the patient's face. He waited carefully. Venable inhaled the ether and Long watched carefully. The tension left his muscles. His breathing deepened and slowed. Long found unconsciousness and made his first incision. Venable did not move at all. Long removed the cyst from Venable's neck. The operation was complete. Venable gave no sign of pain. When he woke, he said he had not felt the slightest degree of pain. Long recorded the charge in his ledger. Ether and removal of tumor, $2. The first surgical anesthesia in history cost $2. That ledger still exists in Jefferson, Georgia. Long operated on Venable again that year, removing another cyst under ether. He performed additional procedures on other patients. Each time, the result was the same. No pain, full recovery. He was a busy country doctor. The Southern Medical Journal had stopped publishing. He wanted more cases before making any claim. He decided to wait. He kept working in silence. From a surgeon's perspective, this is the most painful part. Long had the evidence. He had witnesses. He had a signed ledger and confirmed cases. He simply waited too long. In Hartford, dentist Horace Wells attended a nitrous oxide show on December 10, 1844. A young man injured his leg and felt nothing at all. Wells grasped the implication immediately. The next morning, Wells had a wisdom tooth extracted under nitrous oxide. He felt nothing. He was convinced. He began using the gas on his patients. He wanted to announce his discovery. Wells approached John Collins Warren at Harvard and requested a public demonstration. Warren agreed. The demonstration was scheduled for January 1845. Wells had used the gas on many patients successfully. The demonstration failed. The gas bag was removed too early. The patient cried out. The physicians shouted, "Humbug!" Wells left the hall humiliated. He returned to Hartford a broken man. His reputation was destroyed before it had truly begun. He continued his practice quietly. He began experimenting with chloroform. He tested every new substance on himself before using it on any patient. One witness to Wells' failed demonstration was a young dentist who had been Wells' student and partner. His name was William Morton. Morton had watched Wells fail. Morton thought about ether. William Morton was 27 years old in 1846. He had failed at several ventures. He had watched Horace Wells humiliated before Harvard's faculty. He believed he could succeed where Wells had not. Morton consulted Charles Jackson, a Harvard chemistry professor. Their conversation was disputed for decades. Morton said he had been thinking independently. Jackson said he had given Morton the crucial idea. Morton experimented on animals and himself. On September 30th, 1846, he extracted a tooth from Eben Frost, while Frost was fully under ether. A reporter had been invited. The story ran everywhere. Morton then approached John Collins Warren, the same surgeon who had given Wells his failed chance. Warren agreed to allow a demonstration during real surgery at his hospital. The date was set. Morton arrived 15 minutes late. Morton gave the ether. Warren removed a tumor from Gilbert Abbott without any sign of pain. When Abbott woke, he said his neck felt scratched. Warren turned to the assembled physicians and said, "Gentlemen, this is no humbug." Everyone remembered Wells failing in this room 1 year before. Morton had succeeded where his former teacher had not. Morton colored the ether red and named it Lithium. He filed for a patent. He refused to reveal the chemical name. He planned to collect fees from every hospital. They were outraged. Within days, Charles Jackson claimed the discovery was his. He said he had explained ether's properties to Morton in full. He demanded recognition and revenues. Morton refused. The war began. Wells pressed his claim not for ether, but for the concept of anesthesia itself. He had used nitrous oxide before Morton. He argued this gave him priority over everything. No one listened. The French Academy awarded a joint prize to Morton and Jackson in 1850. Morton refused entirely. He said the award was his alone. He preferred nothing over sharing credit with a swindler. Congress became involved. Morton applied for $100,000, arguing the government had used his discovery without payment. He applied 3 times. All 3 were rejected. His debts mounted. Crawford Long had read about Morton's demonstration in Boston. He recognized what had happened. He gathered his witnesses and his ledger. He published his account in December 1849, 7 years too late. Long's account was clear. He had used ether for surgery on March the 30th, 1842, more than 4 years before Morton's demonstration. He provided dated records, signed statements, and patient testimony. Long did not fight aggressively for credit. He stated his case and returned to his patients. He wrote that he would leave the verdict to the medical profession. He accepted the outcome. Horace Wells could not accept any outcome. He watched Morton receive recognition he believed was his. He experimented obsessively, testing anesthetic substances on himself with increasing doses. He was coming apart. Chloroform was stronger and more dangerous than ether. Wells became dependent on it. He knew his judgment was failing. He understood the risk. He could not stop. He continued using it anyway. On his 33rd birthday, Wells threw acid onto 2 women on a New York street. He was arrested and taken to the Tombs prison. He had no memory of the act whatsoever. In his cell, Wells regained clarity. He understood what he had done. He wrote to his family asking for forgiveness. He described himself as a different person under the drug. On the night of January 23rd, Wells used chloroform hidden in his cell. He cut his femoral artery with a razor. A guard found his body the next morning. He was 33. Charles Jackson continued fighting for decades. European bodies had credited him as the discoverer of etherization. In 1849, King Oscar of Sweden gave him a gold medal made specifically for him. Jackson had disputed credit throughout his career. He had claimed priority against Samuel Morse for the telegraph. His colleagues described him as incapable of allowing anyone else priority in any field. The American Medical Association censured Morton in 1864. An Atlantic Monthly article in 1868 supported Jackson. Morton became agitated and traveled to Washington to argue his case. He began to deteriorate. Morton became feverish in the carriage. He ran to a pond at Central Park and threw himself in. He said he needed to cool. It was the beginning of a massive stroke. Morton was 48 years old. The attending surgeon told his students no man had done more for humanity. Morton's wife produced 3 medals. These were the only things they had ever received. Jackson outlived Morton by 12 years. In 1873, at 67, he was admitted to McLean Asylum near Boston. His language was affected by a stroke. He died in 1880. He never left. Crawford Long moved to Athens, Georgia in 1850. He continued his practice without drama. He did not pursue the controversy further. He treated patients. He used ether throughout his entire remaining career. Long's priority was recognized in 1879, 1 year after his death. A marble statue was placed in the National Statuary Hall in Washington in 1926. Georgia chose him to represent the state. Long County in Georgia carries his name. Crawford Long Hospital in Atlanta carries his name. A postage stamp honored him in 1940. These recognitions came decades later. He received none in life. On June 16, 1878, Long was called to assist a woman in difficult labor in Athens. He delivered the baby. As he completed care for the mother, he collapsed from a stroke. He briefly regained consciousness. His first words were not about himself. He asked, "How is she?" He gave instructions for her care. Then he lost consciousness again. He was 62 years old. Crawford Long was the only person not destroyed by this dispute. Morton died at 48. Wells died in prison at 33. Jackson died in an asylum. Long died asking about his patient. In 1868, Boston erected a monument to the discovery of anesthesia. It depicts a figure giving ether to a patient. It stands in the public garden today. No name is on it. The committee responsible could not agree on whose name to inscribe. The dispute had lasted 22 years. They chose a single word instead: discovery. The discoverer's name was left entirely blank. Boston residents called it the Either Monument. Either Morton, Wells, Jackson, or Long. No one could decide. The city that first announced this discovery could not say who had made it. The Ether Dome at Massachusetts General Hospital was named a National Historic Site in 1965. It remains a teaching space. The operating room where history was made is now a lecture hall. March 30 is National Doctors' Day in the United States. The date honors Crawford Long's first use of ether in 1842. He never knew his date would become a national observance. I want to speak from inside the operating room. That is where this story still lives. Every time a patient goes under anesthesia, what began in a small Georgia office is repeated. Crawford Long's error was not scientific. His evidence was solid and his witnesses were credible. His error was timing. He believed certainty mattered more than speed. In medicine, timing is everything. Morton understood timing perfectly. He invited a reporter. He chose a public setting, but he made the discovery about profit instead of patience. The patent destroyed everything he had hoped to gain. Horace Wells found the principle but could not survive one failed demonstration. One patient cried out, one audience laughed. That single moment sent him toward a prison cell on his birthday. Charles Jackson could never accept that a discovery might belong to two people. He could not share. He could not stop fighting. He was still fighting in 1873 when his brain failed. There is a line in Crawford Long's ledger from March 30th, 1842. Ether and removal of tumor, $2. Below it are dozens of other entries. He did not mark this differently. That is the most remarkable thing about Long. He did not experience his discovery as a discovery. A patient feared pain. He removed it. He charged $2. He moved on. In every operating room in the world today, the same sequence occurs. Anesthesia administered. Patient unconscious. Surgeon proceeds. That chain runs all the way back to a small wooden office in Georgia. The Boston Monument still has no name. The Either Monument. The city that first told this discovery to the world could not agree on who made it. Almost never spoken of. Crawford Williamson Long, born November 1st, 1815, died June 16th, 1878. His last words were a question about his patient. No one has improved on that ending. No one has come close.